You're on the mic. And on today's episode, we're going to continue looking back through some of the classic animation studios here in the States. Today, we're going to focus on Filmation. Filmation, of course, known for such classics as He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the Groovy Ghoulies, um, the Superman Aquaman Adventure Hour, Superman Batman Adventure Hour, and many of the Archie cartoons of the 60s and 70s. So, and Brave Star as well. Um, so, without no further ado, let's get going here. So, Filmation Associates was an American production company that produced animation and live action programming for television from 1963 to 1989. Located in Reseda, California, the animation studio was founded in 1962. Filmation's founders and principal producers were Lou Schemer, um, spelled Scheimer. I believe that's German, so that's why I'm pronouncing it as Schemer. It might be pronounced Schemer or Shamer, but I'm going to pronounce it as Schemer. Lou Schemer, um, Hal Sutherland, and Norm Prescott. Background: Lou Schemer and Filmation's main director Hal Sutherland met in 1957 while working at Larry Harmon Pictures on made-for-TV Bozo, as in Bozo the Clown, and Popeye cartoons. Eventually, Larry Harmon closed the studio by 1961. Schemer and Sutherland went to work at a small company called True Line, one of whose owners was Marcus Lipsky, who then owned Ready Whip Whipped Cream. SIB Productions, a Japanese firm with U.S. offices in Chicago, approached them about producing a cartoon called Rod Rocket. The two agreed to take on the work and also took on a project for Family Films, owned by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, for 10 short animated films based on the life of Christ. Paramount Pictures soon purchased SIB, and True Line's staff increased, including the arrival of former radio disc jockey Norm Prescott, who became a partner in the firm. He had already been working on the animated feature Pinocchio in Outer Space, which was primarily produced by Belvision Studios. The three of them, they eventually left True Line, and Schemer began working on commercials, including for Gillette and others, which began what became Filmation. Um, he met he met lawyer Ira Epstein, who had worked for Harmon but had left the firm and now put together the new corporation with Schemer and Sutherland. It officially became Filmation Associates as of September 1962, so named because, in quotes here, we were working on film but doing animation, so putting them together yielded Filmation. So basically, how they got the name of the company is they created a portmanteau of film and with film and animation, putting jamming it all together as Filmation. Um, Both Rod Rocket and The Life of Christ series credited Filmation Associates with production design in addition to Schemer and Sutherland as directors. SIB Productions whose logo bore a resemblance to the original Filmation logo designed by Ted Littlefield, would soon go on to become Sib Tower 12 Productions and produce the first few Chuck Jones Tom and Jerry films for MGM until becoming MGM Animation Visual Arts for the remainder of the films. Um, let's see. Norm Prescott brought in Filmation's first major project, Journey Back to Oz, an animated sequel to the MGM film The Wizard of Oz from 1939. Begun in 1962, storyboarding, voice recording, and most of the music scoring and animation had been completed when financial challenges caused the project to be put on hold for nearly 8 years. Yeah, Journey Back to Oz wasn't released in the States until I think 1974. So, in the meantime, during the interim, the new Filmation studio turned their attention to a more successful medium, network television. For the next few years, they made television commercials and some other projects for other companies and made an unsuccessful pilot film for a Marx Brothers cartoon series. They also tried to develop an original series named The Adventures of Stanley Southheart, later renamed Yank and Doodle, about a boy and a dog, but they were never able to sell it and almost closed down until approached by DC Comics editor Mort Weisinger to do a Superman cartoon. This premiered on September 10th, 1966, and was followed by several of other DC comics. Then in 1968, the first Archie show. Both series greatly helped Filmation's popularity to increase into the 1970s when it scored big with several of its series. So basically, in the late 60s, early 70s, Filmation produced a number of Saturday morning cartoons, including, of course, The Adventures of Superman, um, The Adventures of Superboy, The Adventures of Aquaman, The Adventures of Batman, which were packaged together in two separate series as the Superman Aquaman Adventure Hour and the Superman Batman Adventure Hour. And particularly on the Superman Aquaman Adventure Hour, they also had 3 episodes each of shorts based on other DC characters, including The Flash, Hawkman, Green Lantern, Teen Titans, and Justice League of America. And then the Archie show spawned a number of other Archie comics based shows, including Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the Groovy Ghoulies, and a number of other series that had Archie in the title, like the U.S. of Archie, Archie comedy show, this, that, etc., etc., etc. Let's see. The Filmation studio was purchased by the Teleprompter Corporation in 1969. Westinghouse Electric Corporation, through its Group W Productions division, acquired Filmation along with its purchase of Teleprompter's cable and entertainment properties in 1981. Filmation's last production was the feature film Happily Ever After, a sequel to the story of Snow White, released to theaters 5 years later in 1993. Also, at the time of the closing, by the way, Filmation closed in 1989. That's basically what it was, what they're getting at here. Um, More like 4 years, but also at the time of the closing, 2 new animated series, Bugsburg, a spin-off of Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night, concerning insect characters who had shown up in that movie, and Bravo, a spin-off of Bravestar, um, were beginning production. In 1998, Westinghouse sold Filmation to an investment consortium led by French L'Oreal Cosmetics Company. Um, Paravision International. Before that sale was complete, Westinghouse shuttered the film studio on February 3rd, 1989, which left L'Oreal with only the Filmation library. Um, this happened a day before a new law went into practice requiring companies to give employees 60 days notice before a mass termination. Okay, so that's pretty much the history and stuff. Um, yeah, the technical stuff I'll leave out, but one other key thing I want to point out here are actually let's look at original characters. The studio created very few original animated characters. Two examples were Fraidy Cat, a timid feline who has lost 8 of his 9 lives, which come back to haunt him, and Wacky and Packy, a caveman and his pet mammoth. Packy refers to the latter character being a pachyderm, you know, who enter the modern age through a time warp, kind of the reverse of Land of the Lost, for those of you who know Sid and Marty Krofft productions. Both of these originally aired as segments of the Uncle Croc's Block series on ABC, hosted by Charles Nelson Riley, in a period where comedy in cartoons was heavily scrutinized for violence. Um, and many shows duplicated the popular Scooby-Doo format. Filmation's strong point was its adaptations of popular television series, movies, and other works, although at least one series, Mush, um, the third animated segment of Uncle Croc's Block, while not a direct adaptation, was inspired by the film and later TV series MASH. Mush was in essence, it was an animated it was a loose animated adaptation of MASH. Basically, I'll put it this way: they gave new meaning to the military term "dogface" because Mush was essentially putting the MASH character, basically making canine anthropomorphic characters of the MASH characters. So think of like Hawkeye and Trapper and Radar and Hot Lips. Think of them as anthropomorphic dogs. Okay, anthropomorphic canines. And you got Mush. And you basically have Mush right there. So, but based on the time that it was made, it would have been more like, it would have been, anthropomorphic versions of Hawkeye, Trapper, Hot Lips, and Radar, and Klinger. Albeit, I don't think they would have played up Klinger's character too much, as if I recall. Um, and Filmation had a fair share of their live action shows too. Um, Filmation incorporated live action into some of its animated series. Series like The Hardy Boys and Archie's Funhouse featured live action footage of an audience watching the bands perform. Fat Albert had segments featuring series creator Bill Cosby. The Kid Superpower Hour with Shazam was more of a hybrid live action variety show with animated segment. Act, Actors appeared as characters from Hero High portion of the series, singing songs and telling jokes. Now, before I move on to the next paragraph here, I know I probably will need to say this just in light of what's happened over the last couple of years here, what's come out about Bill Cosby. Mind you, you know, however you choose to, you know, however you choose to measure that against the work he's done in the past, like with Fat Al and the Cosby Kids, the family shows he'd had, the Cosby Show and Cosby in the 80s and 90s. That's that's totally, I can understand there are people out there who may feel that these allegations that came out, and I think he actually may have been convicted of those things, but that may negate everything he's. For some of you, it may negate what he's done in the past. Others, you might have more of a forgiving attitude about it, but that's for you to decide for yourselves. I'm not going to say much more other than the fact that yes, he did host and Filmation produced Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, and there was some good that came from that show, um, from that franchise, you know, um, and it's totally up to you to decide how to weigh the good of those shows versus what's come out recently. So, um, let's see. With more of a high, okay. Actors appeared as characters from Hero High portion of the series, singing songs and telling jokes. Filmation made 6 fully live-action series, including Space Academy, its spin-off Jason of Star Command, Arc 2, Shazam, based on the DC Comics character Captain Marvel, the Ghostbusters, I'll get a little bit more into that in a moment here, and the Secrets of Isis. In fact, back in '75, Shazam and the Secret of Isis were combined into one show as the Shazam Isis Hour. So now moving on to the Ghostbusters here. First off, just a note: this Ghostbusters is not to be confused with the '80s movie, and I'll explain why here in a moment. Filmation produced a live-action series called The Ghostbusters in 1975, starring former F Troop stars Larry Storch and Forrest Tucker, with noted science fiction fan and collector Bob Burns as Tracy the Gorilla. Larry Storch would, of course, become one of Filmation's main voice actors, too, and I'll get into that a little later, too. The characters worked as paranormal investigators working for an unseen chief named Zero, who delivered their ghost-busting assignments in whimsical disguised recording devices, as in, Mission Impossible, a la Mission Impossible. 9 years later, 1984, Columbia Pictures, who produced an unrelated 1984 movie of almost the same name, Ghostbusters, had to obtain the rights to the title from the company. Filmation capitalized on the popularity of the film by producing a new cartoon based on the earlier series. Basically, that was a series with the car that would change into a plane, all that, a jet, basically. Let's see. Like its other shows, it used stock footage heavily. In one episode, character designs and animation sequences were recycled from the Groovy Ghoulies series of nearly 15 years earlier. To avoid confusion, the animated series based on the film, in other words, the animated series based on the 1984 film, was called The Real Ghostbusters. Okay. As a dig on the Filmation series, an episode was written about a group of fraudulent ghost fighters trying to steal the real Ghostbusters business in Thunder. Yes, they asked to use the name, and then they just totally just go on them. Okay, whatever. The Looney Tunes Groovy Ghoulies crossover. Also of note is Daffy Duck and Porky Pig meet the Groovy Ghoulies, a special featuring several of Warner Brothers Looney Tunes stars. A special feed. Okay, so also of note is Daffy Duck and Porky Pig Meet the Groovy Ghoulies, a special featuring several of Warner Brothers Looney Tunes stars, paired with Filmation's own Groovy Ghoulies, a group of classic monsters. Written by Len Jansen and Chuck Menville, it aired on ABC's Saturday Superstar Movie in 1972. Many of these Superstar movies were used as pilots for potential series. So that's this is all about. While most of the Warner Brothers characters were drawn well, veteran Warner's animator Virgil Ross was working there at the time, along with other animators that had worked for Warner Brothers Animation in the late 1960s, such as Laverne Harding and Ed Solomon, and were voiced by veteran voice actor Mel Blanc. The special is not liked by many fans of classic Warner Brothers animation because of its limited animation as well as a weak storyline. Problem with that is that most of the classic Warner Brothers cartoons really didn't have strong storylines anyways. They were more episodic and usually had a recurring theme. So I don't know why fans would have been complaining about this crossover having a weak storyline, but anyways, this was not Filmation's last dalliance with classic cartoon characters. In the late 1970s, the company produced new series based on characters from the Terrytoons archive, Mighty Mouse and Heckle and Jekyll, titled The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse and Heckle and Jekyll, and a new Tom and Jerry series as well from MGM. They also did some feature film work. Um, Filmation also ventured into the feature film business with the success of television firmly established by 1970. The company became profitable enough to return to the shelved Journey Back to Oz project, completing the animation and some minor voiceover work begun in 1962 and finished the film in 1971. It would take another year for Journey to be released theatrically in the okay, so 1972. 2 more years before its 1974 U.S. In the United Kingdom. Journey was to be released theatrically in 1972 in the United Kingdom, and then in 1974 the U.S. release, and yet another 1976 before it finally found its audience in network television, the very medium in which Filmation became successful. There, the film was expanded with live action segments featuring Bill Cosby, who was in the midst of his success with the studio's Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. A deal with Warner Brothers yielded Treasure Island, Oliver Twist, several others which were never produced. In its final years, Filmation produced feature film versions of its He-Man and She-Ra franchises, The Secret of the Sword. The Secret of the Sword was basically used, was used as a pilot for the She-Ra series that was broken into 5 parts when the show originally debuted, as well as continuations to other established stories such as Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night and Happily Ever After. Now let's talk a little bit about the voice talent. Um, so, like other animation studios, Filmation had its stock company of voice-over actors. Some of the most famous included Larry Storch, Dallas McKennon, best known as the voice of Archie in the Archie cartoons, and as Cincinnatus, the Daniel Boone TV series. Bud Collier, the original radio voice of Superman. Again, as I mentioned in the my voices of Superman, um, voice of Superman episode the other day, reprised the role for Filmation for the late 1960s version of the Man of Steel, Adam West and Burt Ward, who recreated their roles as Batman and Robin from their 1960s live action series for Filmation's 1977 animated in. So the 1977 New Adventures of Batman series was voiced by Adam West and Burt Ward from the 60s television series. The version the version that came out in 67 68 as part of the Superman Batman Adventure Hour, that was voiced by Olan Soleil, who would go on to also voice Batman in the in the many of the Super Friends cartoons, as well as his guest appearance on Scooby Doo. So um, Jane Webb, Jane Webb was Batgirl in the 1977 Batman series, and good friends and colleagues Edward Asner and Linda Gary. Gary voiced a majority of Filmation's work in the 1980s. Basically, Linda Gary was predominantly the many of the female voices in the 80s Filmation works, including He-Man and She-Ra. In He-Man, of course, she was Teela, Queen Marlena, Sorceress, Evelyn. In She-Ra, she was, of course, Madame Raz, Glimmer, Shadow Weaver, and among and Scorpina, um, along with John Irwin, who voiced, of course, Reggie Mantle in the Archie cartoons, as well as being the voice of He-Man in his roles, He-Man and and He-Man. Alan Oppenheimer, a character actor from TV and film, known most notably as the voices of like Man at Arms, Skeletor, among others, throughout the He-Man She-Ra series. Ted Knight, who of course provided the voice of the narrator on the Superman Aquaman Adventure Hours as well. Well, no, actually, he was the narrator in the Aquaman series. Jackson Beck actually provided the voice of the narrator for the Superman series at that time. Um, Jackson Beck, of course, known also as the voice of Bluto from in the famous Studios Popeye cartoons, as well as later being the narrator for the G.I. Joe series. Um, George DeCenzo was John Blackstar in the Blackstar series, as well as Hordak and Bo from She-Ra. Melody Britt, the voice of She-Ra, and Catra and Castaspella and She-Ra. Howard Morris, Pat Fraley, Charlie Adler, Ed Gilbert, Susan Blue, Erica Schemer, daughter of Lou Schemer, and even Lou Schemer himself provided, either uncredited or under the pseudonym Eric Gundam. Lou Schemer, as Eric Gundam, would often do some of the more anthropomorphic characters on He-Man and She-Ra, as well as some of the comedic characters. In He-Man, of course, he was the voice of Orko, as well as King Randor, Stratos, Trapjaw, um, the Attack Track. In She-Ra, he would provide the voices of like Cal, um, Grizzlor, Leech, Montana. So yeah, so those were basically the voice talent for Filmation rather. Okay, so that's pretty much the it for that. I think now I will move on to this day in each history. Today being May 11th, 2020. We'll move on to that segment now as I think I've pretty much covered a lot of the stuff I want to for Filmation. Just giving you guys an idea, including some of the, as I said, some of the works include, He-Man and She-Ra in the 80s, the Groovy Ghoulies, a bunch of Archie cartoons, and like some of the 60s and 60s, um, DC Comics cartoons with the New Adventures of Batman in 1977. So those are probably the most famous of the Filmation works. So now, as we move on to this day in each history, on this date in today being May 11th, 2020, on this date, first off, on this date in 1996 would mark the completion, the end of Captain Planet and the Planeteers, the first syndicated run of the series. Captain Planet on this date in 1996, Captain Planet and the Planeteers would finish its first syndicated run on TBS. There's a U.S. American and environmental themed cartoon starring Captain Planet and 5 Planeteers who would call forth, representing different elements. Um, four classic elements of earth, fire, wind, and water, and then heart, kind of indicating, having a heart for the planet, basically. So on this date, 1986, Captain Planet and the Planeteers would finish its first syndicated run on TBS. Then on this date a couple of things happened on this date in 2005. First off, on this date in 2005, Funimation, originally founded in 1994 by Gen Fukunaga and his wife, would become a subsidiary of Navari Corporation. On this date in 2005, Funimation would become subsidiary of Navari Corporation. And then, also on this date in 2005, DC Comics would put out on the newsstands Aquaman Volume 6, Issue 30, a story titled Kiss of Death, Part 1, The Nine. So the 30th issue of the 6th volume of Aquaman was released on this date in 2005 as well. And then, also on this date in 2010, on an episode of SmackDown, Kofi Kingston would win a 5-man tournament to crown a new WWE Intercontinental Champion, only to have it stripped from him by Vince McMahon and given back to previous champion Drew McIntyre. Also on this episode of SmackDown, Layla would defeat Beth Phoenix for the Women's Championship. So on this date in 2010, on an episode of SmackDown, you had 3 title changes in essence. You had Layla beating Beth Phoenix for the Women's Championship, Kofi Kingston winning a tournament to become WWE Intercontinental Champion, only to have him stripped of it and return to the previous champion, Drew McIntyre. So with that all being said, we move on here. You guys can go ahead and check the links below. You guys can go ahead and check the links below. My Discord is down there. If you guys want to contact me directly, you can go ahead and direct message me. Okay, so if you check the links below, you can my Discord link's down there. If you want to contact me directly, go ahead and direct message me there. Also, I'm still promoting a bunch of different. You can also join the Discord as well if you like. Check it out and join if you like. If you, I'm also still promoting a bunch of different dub companies. There's a lot of work out there. You guys can go check out. Whether or not get word of it through my VA profiles or some of the other profiles and features I've done, like the one I'm doing today. Let's see. Also, I'm still promoting the GoFundMe's. As always, guys, never feel like you have to donate. If it's on your heart to do so and you have the means to, please consider donating. If if you've already donated, please consider donating again. And if you cannot donate, you can still help out the cause by sharing the links. Because sharing is caring, and you never know. Maybe somebody in your circle of friends may see what's going on, and may want to help. Doesn't hurt to ask, after all. And if you like this content, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. We look forward to the conversation with you guys, as long as it's civil and respectful. Um, and I hope I'll catch you guys at the premiere this Friday of Voices Big and Small. Um, this week I'll be focusing in on Hillary Haig, a Houston-based voice actress who's worked for ADV and Sentai. And until tomorrow, bye.